Good morning, guys. I am going to be answering Leslie's question regarding Facebook ads and targeting. So I'm going to pull it up here while I get that up. Got my We Start Shit shirt on today for all you entrepreneurs that are out there. Starting shit. Don't ever forget that. All right, let me see here. So her question was, I typically see the same sponsored ads in my feed all the time, and they are targeting me because I'm interested in training, funnels, coaching, Facebook cheat sheets, etc. I am the right audience, but let me ask you this. When Facebook lets me see the same ad over and over, does this count as a reach, and the marketer is paying for this reach even though I'm not interacting with it? If so, this is a whole lot of money that someone will spend on an ad that people are not interacting with or signing up with. Will Facebook eventually give up on me and move to another person since I am not interacting? I know this might depend on the ad type. What are your thoughts on this? So, hey, Leslie. So, I'm glad you're here because I'm actually talking about your question. So, if you are seeing the same sponsored ad over and over again, I would be almost willing to bet money that it is not an ad to you as a cold audience. It's actually probably a retargeting ad, which means that you have somehow in some way engaged with their content before. Whether you've engaged in their content or they've created a custom audience based off of like you opting in for like a freebie or something. So the chances are that they have, hey Tori, chances are that they have, they're retargeting you for something. And that's why, because from what you're saying, that it has a high, like you're seeing the same thing over and over and over again, which means that there's a high frequency. And typically, with ads to a cold audience, depending on the audience size, you might only have like a frequency of like 1 to 2, maybe 3, which means that your ad was shown to that person, between 1 and 2 times. Now, that's for a cold audience. Now, retargeting audiences, you could literally have the same ad be shown to you 14 times, 20 times, 30 times. When you set up a retargeting ad, you can determine like what window of time that you want to retarget. So like if I'm retargeting people who visited my website, I can retarget people who visited in the last 7 days, in the last 10 days, in the last 365 days. So, right, if I'm retargeting people who visit in the last 365 days, naturally it's going to retarget the same people for longer. But if I only want to retarget people who visited in the last day or 5 days and you fall out of that window, well, then you're no longer going to see the ads. Hey, Brandy. Also, because, you're saying essentially people are not interacting or signing up with, without really seeing any data, like we don't know if it's working or not working. You can usually tell by the comments or the engagement on a post, on a sponsored post, how well it's working. If there's a lot of likes, shares, comments, usually they'll keep it going because it's working. Just because you're not opting back into it or you're not engaging with it doesn't mean that others aren't. So if they're smart marketers, they're doing it because it's working. So I'm also rereading your question. This is a whole lot of money that someone will spend that people are not interacting with or signing up with. So at the end of the day, you really have to look at this from a customer acquisition cost or a cost per lead, right? So yeah, they may spend, a lot of money in the sense of they're spending, $20, $50, $100 per lead. But if they're selling a $5,000 high ticket item, then it doesn't really matter. And so it really depends on what they can afford to spend. And retargeting people is always important because they've already engaged with you in some sense. Let me see your comment here. If I do a cold audience target, it will show only to them once or twice. So the money is being spent wisely by Facebook. If you're targeting a cold audience, like the frequency of how often it shows, there's a lot of factors. Like if you have an audience size of 1,000 people, that's a lot different than if you have an audience size of 100,000 people. And so depending on the size of your audience can depend on how frequently it's shown. It also depends on what your bidding strategy is. If you set it to manual bidding and if you set it to manual bidding and you're outbidding everyone, well, naturally you're going to win. But there's also like a fine line, like a balance between like what's the objective of the campaign. Is it reach? Is it link clicks? Like all of these things like build up like this perfect storm of trying to get it to work. So I think that answers your question. The money is being spent wisely by Facebook. Like that's kind of tough, right? Like they don't give a shit about spending your money wisely. They give a shit about making more money, right? So technically you're the one that has to determine, is the money being spent wisely for your business? Are you getting the leads that you want? Are you getting the conversions that you want? Are you targeting the right people with the right offer? Like all of these things come into play as far as I'm reading her comment again. I get it. I just don't want them to show my ad to the same people over and over when they're not interested. Well, look, I know your business specifically, that you're more of an e-commerce type business versus like a high ticket offer that somebody has. So yeah, I get that you wouldn't want to do that, but at the same time, you're trying to establish a brand and that doesn't happen overnight. So you've got to, the more that you stay top of mind with these people, the better. But you can actually see how often, if you're not just boosting a post and you're actually running ads from the campaign, from the business manager, like you're setting up and running campaigns, you can see the frequency of how often your ad is being served. And I'd be willing to bet that if it's a cold audience that you're targeting, I'd be willing to bet that it's probably between like probably between 1 and 1.3 for the frequency. Depending on, again, there's a lot of factors, but depending on how often how long the ad's been running, how big the audience is, and kind of what your strategy is there. But hopefully that answers your question. Guys, I love these questions. If you have more, keep them coming. Post in the group, engage, share, like, love, heart, do all that shit, invite people. But hopefully this was helpful. I love answering everybody's questions. I hope you guys have a kick-ass day. Keep moving forward, never quit. See y'all later.